Coach, get started on National Signing Day today?
Yeah, it's another good day in the fact that there was some people that we were able to supplementally add, which was great. It's very anticlimactic anymore, seemingly a little bit, when you have such an early signing day and then have one here, and you have, you know, 4 important additions for us though, with Patrick Broadway, who I think is an excellent running back. I mean, it's one of those things, I think he's kind of a victim of 2025 recruiting, in the sense of with transfer portals and numbers of schools taking less and less high school players. This was a guy that had a lot of people talk to him, but no one was pulling a trigger on him. And a lot of times it's like once there's one offer, then there becomes a dozen. And so I was really excited about him. Jason Handy is a very good player from the Austin area that was high motor, really good athlete, really good frame. Fits in so many ways. I mean, he sent me a picture a couple weeks ago of a really nice boar that he killed. So I'm really happy with him. Charlie Houston, long snapper, was valuable in the fact that, you know, when you get to this 105 world right now, we needed to have a competent, clear, 2 things: backup long snapper for the now, and then also a long snapper that we have in the program for the future. So, and we feel that way with Charlie in that regard. And then Gabriel, really good prospect. I wanted to make sure that we're always going to try to oversign and have more players in the defensive line and the offensive line, you know, because those are areas that are much more difficult to obtain in transfer portals. And I think that in looking at that was a big reason why we were able to sign him. I think he's a good player with a big upside. He's only played football for 3 years. And I really, really like the way in the story of why he got into football. So it's really, really good. I'm excited about those 4. Of course, then you've got the list of players that we also added, and you know, it goes right along with, you know, kind of where we were at coming out of the Washington State game. I had somebody ask me not too long ago, said, "You've been busy?" I said, "Well, we're going to add 40 players, 3 coaches, 3 graduate assistants, video person in recruiting. We've been busy, you know, in that regard. We needed to be." And I come out of the Washington State game, had 3 clear goals. Number 1, keep our team together. And the players we needed to be here are here. So that's goal number 1. Number 2 was to sign a really good high school class, because still foundationally, you know, we need to sign a good group of high school players to develop and work through going forward. And then the third thing is that we needed to utilize the space that we had in the slots that we had to add in an infusion of maturity, talent, and competition. And just because a player is old doesn't mean he's mature. And we had a couple situations with that a year ago. And so there was a first and foremost thing to it that, okay, you know, there's going to be a lot of conversations within this. You know, there was a lot of conversations with the high school guys. And in particular, you know, there was things that I wanted to call guys on a Sunday after they lost on a Friday night. What'd you do Saturday? And you have a guy that tells me that he was in the tank and he didn't want to go anywhere. I want that guy. Guy tell me he was, you know, he went with some friends, went out last night. I don't want that guy. And so there was a lot of things that were intentional that way. I do want to thank, you know, all of our fan base for one thing. You know, all of our faculty and people who take time to meet with athletes that come on official visits now and also in the season as that goes. You know, and the reason I say that is we had 61 official visits. We brought in 40 players. And so that's a hit rate of 65.6%, which is really good. And when you sit there and say, okay, here's the record or whatever, and we were able to still do that. And then, you know, we were able to, on the December 13th weekend, we had a total of 11 transfers or junior college players in during that stretch. We got 9 of those players. And we were able to get out in front of a lot of things, get going on a lot of things, and put a pretty strong case together for those players as to why this would be a great place for them to be. And so within that, so the rundown for you right now of what has been essentially signed from December through now is 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 2 tight ends, 5 offensive linemen, 5 wide receivers, 3 defensive tackles, 6 defensive ends, 4 linebackers, 8 defensive backs, and a long snapper. Okay, so you know, there's things when you go through a season like we had last year, which nobody around here is happy about, most of all me. But all of our players are handling this the way that they need to, and the fact that they're pissed and they want to work hard and change that. But there was also, you know, when you're in it, you know, this was I alluded to a conversation I had with Coach Bowl during the season. And one of the things he said, when you're in certain things like that, you can't fix it while you're in it. There's certain things you can't fix while you're in it. Once you get out of it, you need to fix it. And there's some things I looked at from a depth, competition, maturity standpoint within the roster we needed to get fixed. And so of that right now, the people that are here, there are 20 mid-year players, 4 high school players, Mason Drew, Tyson Dean, Dion DeBlanc, and Axel Ramazani. And then the rest of the transfers and junior college players are here as well. So we've got 20 new players in the spring. We'll have 103 players go through spring practice. We'll have another 21 come in then, 105 roster spots. It's kind of like, you know, when the Joker took the guys in the Dark Knight and threw the little stick on the floor and welcome to the team, and whoever got that stick, that's kind of the way it went, you know. And so that's kind of what we're looking for in that regard. And so we've got a lot of work to do now in the spring and all the things that way. We have to be able, you know, and in the spring portal, we're still in the spring portal. We're going to look to add 3 or 4 players in the spring portal. Certainly a punter is possible in that. Well, we'll see, you know, with the players that are here, where we're at with that. If we had one more thing on the wish list for the mid-year right now, would have been another receiver. But as you kept going and going and going, the one thing you don't want to do, you don't want to just spend money on something that you don't want. And what I mean by that is use a scholarship spot on a player that you get here and he's not a good enough player. And so you have to make that evaluation and look at it and go, it's better for us to sit back. That's where we got to there. You know, and then, you know, what we've got to do in the off season between now and spring practice and then through spring practices, we've got to increase our number of winning and winnable players. And then we've got to increase that number in the offensive line. That number was way too low a year ago. We've got to increase that number at defensive back. We've got to increase that number at wide receiver, all the way around as far as guys when they go on the field that you know, okay, we're winning with that guy. And so those things are critical to us right now with where we're at. And I think that's kind of all the update and the rundown. Oh, the last thing I will say is when we get to spring practice, of course, the spring game, you know, that's one thing. It's the last Saturday of April. We start spring practice March 25th. All these Saturday practices will be open to the public. And we'll open up all the practices all the way through for the media. So that's where we're at. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Jay, you guys had to let a running back out of his NLI, but then how nice is it to turn around and find the guy who rushed for 2,000 yards last year for the Broadway?
Yeah. First of all, with the NLI thing, you know, you get to a point if a guy doesn't want to be here, I don't want him here because in 6 months he's going to want to transfer anyway. And so, you know, but also by the same token, that request was asked for in December, sometime pre-Christmas. And I was also going to make sure that that release was granted when it's most advantageous for our program. So that's why that release didn't come until about the third week of January. And so, but to then find a player that rushed for 11 yards a carry in 6A football in Texas, who's a 200-pound guy right now, that's very strong, that we had a mid 4.5 number on when TCU camp when we were there last summer. Yeah, that I don't know that we could have done any better in that situation than Patrick Broadway. And I'm a big Patrick Broadway fan. I went to the school last week, and there was going to be like okay, I want to get a feel for this. I want to truly figure out if I like this guy. And it didn't take me more than a couple minutes to where I was like, yeah, okay. Because I only get one shot on the road to go see that person. And so, sitting from him face to face, that was pretty easy.
So you mentioned that COVID class a couple weeks ago. How important was it when kind of attacking this to balance out those classes?
That was critical. That was critical. I mean, and look, it wasn't like we went into it and just had a set number of going, hey, we need 4 of this many years left and 3 of this many years left. It wasn't solely that, but you knew that, like, I wanted to get a couple guys that were in the 1-year mode. Okay, great. So that's Anish Vyas, that's Braden Johnson, that's Braden Wilson. Okay, great. I wanted to get a couple guys that were in that 2-year mode, right? And that's, Ethan Stulsatz and guys like that are in that type of pick. Teron Kelman's one that are in that picture there, because we needed to balance some of that, because the thing is, with some of these extra spots, it would have made no sense for us to go out and sign 38 high school guys. We'd sit there, and then next year you just see me standing up here and telling everybody, well, we're the youngest team in the country, and give us a pass on that. That's not the case. We had things that we needed to address in the here and now. Look, we had a lot of help doing it too. And so I think that's a big piece of it. And so I'm excited about that. We were able to balance a lot of this out. And then, like I said, there's just, Braden Wilson's one example. A couple weeks ago when it's super cold here, right, his car door was froze. He couldn't open it to come to a 6:30 run. The number of guys that would have tried to call in, make an excuse, do something like that. Well, he Rocky Balboa's across LARAMIE for a little over a mile to get here on time for the run. So he's out, hitting his run at 6 in the morning, to get here. And so you appreciate that, right? Like, a 6'5", 255-pound guy running down the street at 6 in the morning when it's -2 out to get somewhere on time, right? That's what was needed. Like, we needed an infusion of that, and so that was the biggest key.
I know you had a funny story when Drew signed or committed, but were there any of these guys that you were like surprised that signed with you, or just really excited about?
Well, first of all, is this. I think there's a couple things that you look at and say, maybe not the norm. All right, I'll use Braden Johnson one. Grew up in Oklahoma. Went to a school in Oklahoma, has a Tulsa offer, comes to Wyoming, okay? Desmond Hearns is another one. He's from the state of Florida. Desmond Hearns visited here, followed up his visit here with a visit to East Carolina, comes to Wyoming. That's not the normal trajectory of what you'd expect. There's a lot of guys from Florida at East Carolina. There's not from Florida that are at Wyoming, and so it's good that all these guys are here working out right now too, because we get a chance to see. I'm not going to start saying a bunch of crap about how good this guy is and how good that guy is. I don't know, and we don't know that yet, anything that way. But I do know from watching them work out that I'm really happy with the infusion of what I see.
Caden, obviously, trial by fire last year, still a young guy, talented guy. With Landon Sims and Drew here, how do you kind of see the quarterback? What do you want to get out of that this spring?
Most competition possible. That's the same at every position. Okay, you got Sebastian Harsh and Tice Westland, and we throw in Isaiah Bogar and Braden Wilson and DeJuan Martin. Okay, here we go. All right, now you got 5 of you. Let's go. Same thing at quarterback. Caden. Obviously, he's got the most experience in that room. The best part about the quarterback room, I think, is this. Obviously, we all know that that's, you know, look, that's one of the most important position in football, right? And so what you want to do, the one thing about it, it's really hard to win without a good quarterback. And I feel like that Caden has certainly the ability to be a really good quarterback, but I also feel like now we've got kind of a room that you look at and go, okay, for the foreseeable future, we could be really solid in the quarterback room. And I think that that's a huge thing. When you can sit there and say that, no matter what, after year one as a head coach, and you're looking at it going forward and going, hey, you know, years 2 and on down the line, that you feel like quarterback is a position that could be a position of strength, you feel pretty good with.
Jay, as a DC at heart, how excited are you to reload this defense? And Taylor, Chee, Kearns, how imperative is it that they come together?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, you know, you could just rewind different things. I think I probably said it multiple times about, hey, we're going to restock this secondary, or we're going to reload this secondary. You know, like that was a must, you know, and so with, you know, so how that all went, you know, Brooklyn Cheek, right? Brooklyn Cheek was a good player coming out of high school that we were recruiting. He goes to Cal. He finds out that Berkeley isn't really his fit. You know, he's kind of a smaller farming community person, even though he's from Northern California. So that wasn't his fit. Okay, so we've got him for a long time right now. Jaden DaCosta was a good player at Portland State, and Jaden DaCosta is one that constantly is on the front of the strength staff talking about how this guy's doing things and how hard he works and everything that way. So really happy with that. Desmond Hearns is a really good player that has played a lot of football, and you know, I mean, the first video, like all of us evaluate things off of Pro Football Focus when we are evaluating transfers, because they've got all this stuff video cut up, and you can see good plays, good bad plays, the whole deal. The first video you're watching on Desmond Hearns is against BYU, you know, and you're watching him, and it's like, okay, this guy's a good athlete and a good player. And then with Justin Taylor, you know, Justin Taylor just, I've been really impressed with him so far, from an attitude, a demeanor, his movement, his size. So yeah, I think that that's a huge piece right there. The rest of the defense all the way through, I mean, you know, we got a grad transfer defensive tackle who's played a lot of football. We got 3 defensive ends who've played quite a bit of football. Isaiah Bogar is a really good player that, you know, I kind of wrote him off after the first of the year because he was going on a visit to Virginia Tech, and there was a couple other, I mean, it's just like, yeah, we're not getting him. Well, then it come back to us a little bit full circle. So there's a good group here that and we needed that. And then we got to put them all together and go, you know, and I think that's the biggest thing. But, you know, I can look at Stulsatz. You know, Stulsatz a really good player, and he's 6'4", 231 pounds right now. Braden Johnson's 240 right now, and he's a good player. So we needed that. We needed an infusion of it all the way through, because the bottom line to it is you need depth so you can be injury resilient. If I made it, look, I'll admit it right now. I did not do a good enough job a year ago of making this roster kind of resilient enough against the full load of a season, okay? We didn't have certain depth at certain positions. We didn't have enough quality throughout. And, you know, okay, could I have gotten all that addressed last year from when I got the job to following the bowl game to when, you know, yeah, I look back at it and there's certain things that could have addressed. There's also things where in the acquisition of players that I was much more like, okay, before we were even thinking that we're going to sign this guy, I want to make damn sure that we're not going to be dealing with entitlement, selfishness, all that stuff all the way through. We got that corrected too, so that's been good. Part of it is this, right? Like Nick Saban says all the time, or said all the time. Biggest key in all this is get the right people on the bus, get them in the right seat, and get the wrong people off the bus. That's what we're trying to get done. So.
how important is this spring gonna be for some of these guys that are gonna be essentially fighting for a roster spot?
It's gonna be fun. You know, it's gonna be a big spring. You know, the one thing I tell people, like, so we're opening up all the Saturday practices to the public is you bring a lunch, because those are gonna be 2.5 hour practices. But it's gonna be, you know, one thing that we have to be far more of as a football, far more of. We've got to become a far more violent football team. We're not anywhere close to where we needed to be with that. And we're going to figure that one out this spring. And so, and that's not because, you know, we did about the same amount of hitting as what we had done before in the past. That's going to triple probably this spring. And it's not going to be anywhere close.
Gonna be junction boys.
And can't quite go that far, but we got a lot of work to do. But by the same token, though, you know, the thing is I like, you know, like maturity of stuff. Look, to bring in Anish Vyas, he's got a 3.9 GPA from Bucknell. Like, I'm not now bringing a guy in that you know, I've got to sit and counsel for 30 minutes a day. Like, you know, and part of it is this too, is, you know, Teron Kelman, you know, Harrison hosted him at Northern Illinois when Teron went on his visit there. So Harrison's the one that actually reached out to me first about Teron. He was at Charlotte, the whole deal. I was eating breakfast with him, I guess it was, a couple weeks ago, and said, hey, his training table, like, he's like, we didn't have any of this at Charlotte. And so, you know, I think a lot of these guys appreciate, you know, kind of facility they're in, the things that they get, and that was a big part of it too, of not getting somebody that's going to tell us what they think. You know.
Coach, as you head into spring, is that defensive depth chart pretty much wide open, or you, like, all the spots kind of like we'll see?
Defensive depth charts on that board right there. That's what it is, wide open. So all the way through, and it's no, I mean. And the thing is, again, we have to increase our number of playable, winnable players. Not only in the fact that, like, it doesn't do you a lot of good. You know, number one, if a linebacker's out on the field and he doesn't do his job on a play, and he knows that you're not taking him out, okay, well, that's an issue, right? But by the same token is, you get a guy out on the field and he can play a couple series, and the next thing you know, you roll someone else in that you know can do just as good a job, then you build a bigger level of engagement of everybody on the team. You know, we can't be playing 12 defensive players or 14 defensive. We got to be playing like 20, and we weren't close to that a year ago. You know, and that was. So yeah, that's why it's a wide open thing, but it's really not a wide open thing to find just 11 guys. It's a wide open thing to find 22 who can really help us and help us win, and that's the biggest thing that's got to happen. And you know, so yeah, that's where we're at. You know, the biggest thing is when we were, you know, I had all this in mind, you know, in October with how far we were going to go numbers wise based on where we were at, what we needed, and what our weaknesses were, which again, when you're in it, you know what they glaringly are. It's just you're not able to address it until you can get out of you got to get out of the tunnel. And but what happens is with it, I wasn't sure we could pull it all off. You know, I mean, when you look at this and go, we've added 6 defensive ends between high school and transfer. You know, I didn't know if we could pull that off, you know, what we did. So, you know, now we got to make them all good players, right? That's the biggest key next.
Donnell Kirkwood said you chewed him out pretty good on special teams when he was playing. You have any funny stories about it?
Well, first of all, here's what I love about Donnell Kirkwood is that, number one, he'll fight. Like, I mean, so, look, I think that I'm excited to have him coach that room, and I'm excited to have him coach that group. And but here's the best thing about Donnell Kirkwood. Donnell Kirkwood had 920 some yards or whatever in 2012. Okay, we were a bad football team in 2011. 2012, we were 6-6, went and played Texas Tech in a bowl game. Donnell was the starting running back. The next 2 years, he got beat out by a guy named David Cobb, who ended up being a 4th round pick after the 2014 season. Donnell never bitched. never complained, never, griped about his role or anything else. He was a great teammate, and then when he got his opportunity, and what I'll never forget is David Cobb pulled his hamstring right before halftime. We were playing Nebraska in 2014, and so Kirkwood had to carry it the whole second half basically, but we had got a recovered fumble inside the 5 at the end of that game, and we had to go run. He ran through people's faces at the end of that, got us a first down. They were out of timeouts, game over, the whole deal. And so, I stepped back from that process in the fact that I wanted, I kind of liked Donnell, but I wanted to see what the other staff members thought. We were all on the same page with that.
Jay, how exciting is it to have this buy-in from the offense, the offensive players? Jay Mike's back, Harrison's back, so many guys on and on and on. And did you have to fight off a lot of people this offseason, calling those guys?
Well, first of all, it's this. I said the first part to it was keep our team together. Okay, we don't have a team yet. That doesn't happen until like May 1st. Okay, they get continually. They get continually hit on, banged on, reached out to by all these third parties and everything else. Caden Anderson just talked to me about it a week ago. I know John Mike has had that. I know a number of our guys have had that over and over and over again. And the problem with it is that there's no clarity to it. There's no definition to it. Anyone who ever says that this is like NFL free agency anymore is so full of crap, because it's not anywhere close, because there's governed restrictions and guidelines and bylaws to NFL free agency. There is none of that to any of this. Someone can be contacted anytime, at any place. So we just keep plugging along and keep working through it. But with that, it was critical to me that we start with Jack Walsh and Caden Barnett and Wes King. Those are 3 really good linemen. Jack Walsh is going to be our starting center, or he's going to move to center in the spring. And so that's what he's working right now. He's very excited about that opportunity. Jay Mike's biggest thing was who else is back. Go with Jalen Sargent's back, Chris Durr's back, Harrison's back, Caden Anderson's back. Then okay, they all feel like that we could be good on offense, and I agree with that. We've got to supplement and add pieces and do those things right now still too. But the running back room, since I've been here, we've had 6 scholarship running backs the whole way through. We'll be at 8 this fall. In that regard, all these different things. We're going to make sure that we provide all that. Evan Svoboda's in a great place. His nose is fixed. He's breathing well. He's almost 250 pounds. He's running really well. He's full-time tight end, full-time bought in. So we're in a good space with all that. I'm excited with their buy-in. I'm excited with the leadership to it too. And I think, look, one of the things that I could point to that while you're in it, Andrew Peasley, Wyatt Wieland, Frank Crum, Trayton Welch, Easton Gibbs, we didn't replace their level of productivity, nor did we replace their level of leadership. And that was an issue. And we will never vote for captains again at the University of Wyoming. That's a thing that don't ever ask me about it. Because like right now, I'll use this as an example. Jalen Sargent is doing a great job of leading in the wide receiver group. Caden Barnett, Jack Walsh, all that, they're doing really good in the offensive line. So, okay, I want to take guys that are doing a good job positionally, leading and doing certain things, and now we're going to cut it down to 4 people when some guy gets his feelings hurt that he's not captain anymore. He stops leading. And that's happened the last couple years around here. I've witnessed it. I sat there and watched it happen, even a year ago, and I'm like, wait a second here, what? Well, I'm not captain, I really can't. Well, that's a bunch of crap. So we're not going to do that. Oh, look, okay, I'm going to grab somebody, I'm going to tell them before the game, hey, if we win the toss, we're going to defer. If they win it and they defer, we're going to take the ball. Okay, that's what we gotta do, right? The rest of it, I want 25 leaders, not 4. So that's what we gotta get to.
Coach, are you, you know, there was a lot of turnover in the wide receiver room. Is there any concern right now with where you're at?
None. I knew after the Idaho game, last year, I thought I was a T-ball coach that didn't take him to get ice cream. Okay, I was like, we're going to revamp the receiver room at the end of this year, and the people we've got are the people we need, and the people that we still have to add, you know, we're going to do that. But there's no regrets about that. Like, that room needed revamped, and that's it. It was a revamp, and I've never seen more people that was, you know, kind of selfish about their opportunity than what I saw during that game that day. And, you know, that was, we're in a much better spot, and that's going to, yeah.
So do you expect some of those young freshmen that you have coming in to be able to push for points?
Well, I mean, we're going to push for DeBlanc too. He's here right now.
Yeah.
He's a really good athlete. Everybody loves him, and strength staff really likes him. He's rooms with Mason Drube. Everywhere you see Mason Drube, there's Dion DeBlanc. You know, they're 2 really good kids that way. So, I mean, DeBlanc, we're going to try to give him the Chris Durr treatment from last year, right? Chris got himself ready to play. We'll try to see if we can get Dion ready to play and do that. He's certainly talented enough to. He's played at a high level, you know, in high school, so it's not like he's going to be scared of a lot of stuff or anything like that. But yet, we still, you know, we got to get great play out of Sargent. We got to get, you know, Chris Durr to continue to keep getting better. And Chris Durr is doing very, very well right now. We've got to get Jalen Bean to keep going. I really like where he's at right now. Jackson Holman we brought in, you know, like where he's at. You know, brought in Richardson. I mean, we've got some pieces and players. But the thing I like right now is, you know, I'm 3+ weeks into a semester. I've not had a guy in my office for ticky-tack stuff. Okay? There in of itself, we've improved dramatically. Okay?
Jay, along those lines with the wide receiver room, to have Javon Bonine now in charge of that, a guy who played at an elite standard here, how does that help?
Well, I think, like, you take Bo, take Hendricks, guys that played at Wyoming, have an appreciation for this place, have a, you know, they know it. They know what it's like to be a student athlete here and everything else. But I think with Coach Bonite, I think there's just I'm excited for him to work with them full time and do that. I know he's got a lot of respect from the players. They all really appreciate him. And so, no, I mean, I'm excited about having him be that player, so.
Jay, you said you wanted guys that live and breathe football. Do you think you're almost at this offseason?
Well, I mean, I think we've made progress toward it. Yeah, I think certainly. You know, we'll find out once we go start playing, you know, and once we start practicing in the spring and doing that. But, you know, like I said, you find that out. We had a team meeting at 6:10 this morning about some things that I wanted to get addressed from last fall on, you know, on an academic side of things and all that. And we have a team meeting. There's probably 45, 50 guys that I could see, maybe more of them beyond it. But there's more than half the room sitting there with notebooks taking notes in a team meeting at 6:10 in the morning. It's way different, right? So no, I mean, I think that there's, look, Jack Walsh wants to win, and he's going to pull people with him. And he's not going to be shy about saying it. And then there's also the fact that, like I said, I mean, we bring in a guy like Braden Wilson, which I didn't, you know, he recruited himself here, really. I mean, I got a call from a guy that was one of his coaches in college that said, hey, this guy's getting in the portal. He's a 2-time all-conference player, and he wants to come to Wyoming. What? You know what I mean? But, okay, the number of times that I would have got some phone call and given some BS excuse about, well, my car door doesn't work, and can I come to the 8 o'clock workout? And no, this guy gets here. We gotta keep living in that space right now. And so right now I'm excited about the group right now. But we got a lot of work to do. I'm not gonna write any checks we can't cash. It's one day at a time.
So you coached at NIU. What are your thoughts on adding them to the Mountain West Conference?
I mean, look, I think they're a good football program, and that whole thing. I mean, and look, we've got a balance now. We've got 9 teams. We can all play 8 games, 4 road, 4 home. I think for them it's a big benefit too. Look, I coached there for 3 years. That Maction stuff isn't any good. You know, I mean, you're playing on a Tuesday, you're playing on a Wednesday. They don't have to do that now, and that's a big deal too. I mean, it'll help them attendance-wise. It'll help them with their fan interest and those types of things. And you know, and it's an academic mess too. When you play on a Wednesday night on the road and leave Tuesday and play Wednesday night and get back at 3 in the morning on Thursday, and then tell them, hey, you got to go to class. I basically missed 3 days of school doing that. So I think for them it's great. For us, it's good. It gives us a new frontier. It gives us a good program to be in the conference and the whole deal. And so I think it's all good.
Does it open up Chicago area more for you guys in recruiting?
Potentially in the fact that, you know, we're still always going to be kind of keep a presence there. We do that now. We're going to continue that going forward. You know, it's not only just Chicago, but also, you know, parts of the upper Midwest, Iowa, you know, that helps us, you know, in those areas because they know that they're going to play a game relatively close to family. So I think that's a good thing. So
We got a few questions on the computer
Okay.
before we're done here.
Yeah, Coach, I was just curious, you mentioned obviously that 105, how much did that kind of play into your thought process during this whole recruitment process?
Well, here's what it does do, okay? The 105 makes you define out every position. Like you don't just, well, I'll take another at this. You know, you got to define out every position. So you're looking at, like, we have 5 quarterbacks that will go through spring ball, and that's the 5 we plan on carrying going forward. We're going to have 5 in the specialist room between the long snappers and the punter kickers. Because what happens is you got to be kind of rigid within those numbers. Now there's some play somewhere, right? Okay, maybe if you have 8 tight ends and 12 receivers, or 13 receivers and 7 tight ends, you might be able to play with that. But otherwise, you better stay within a certain goalpost of the numbers, and that does impact that. So, you know, not only are we in this equivalency space, you know, now where scholarships can eventually, you know, based on this settlement that's supposed to be coming, that you can break, you know, not break them up, but certainly utilize academic money or guys that are only here for a semester to your benefit. You know, every time that we would be getting ready for a visit, I would be looking at a projection of our 105 or our total roster of where we're at positionally, because it's like, you know, once we got, you know, here's an example. Once Desmond Hearns and Brooklyn Cheek and Jaden DaCosta and Justin Taylor all signed, you know, we had also had a couple other, you know, Caden Kimball-Turner, Elvin and Pofo, you know, sign at those positions in the December signing date. It's like, we're done. Like, we've hit our limit. We can't go anymore. Even if there was a good player come out there. I've had people reach out to me about a couple good players that came out after that. It was like, I got to stay within this goalpost here within numbers. And that's where the 105 kind of will dictate and impact certain things going forward.
Well, I got one more, I don't know if you has anything, but the way you kind of talk, it seems like there's almost been a culture shift over this offseason. Is that just from those 25-ish leaders kind of implementing a grind kind of like mindset?
Look, I don't want to say that's not like a culture. I mean, here's the thing what happened. In 23, we had a really good group of seniors, senior leadership. We were remarkably healthy. We started basically the same defense the whole year. In 24, we didn't replace that leadership or productivity from those seniors. Okay, that was number one. The second part was we didn't stay healthy at certain positions that we had been healthy at for the previous couple years, and that hurt there. And then that's what magnified my lack of looking forward into the roster and going, okay, what happens if Isaac White, for the first time in his career, misses an extended stretch? Okay, oh, are we good enough there? You know, Buck Coors left. Are we good enough there to now survive this if this happened? And we weren't. Okay, and that was the thing that magnified and showed up at times. And so, you know, it's not as much a culture shift, but I also do think that we looked and identified at a number of things from a maturity and business and how we handle certain things on and off the field. On and off the field. Our academic performance here wasn't as good as what it needed to be last fall. Okay, well, there's a reason for why certain things happen certain ways. And, you know, a number of those guys won't be academically performing here in the future anyway. But still, it's one of those things that, like, we needed a shift of a couple things. There was a couple personalities that needed to be shifted out. But other than that, I think we need to do everything and do it better.
Alright, good. I wanted to ask about injuries, like update on Nate Geiger and Wes King.
Yeah, so here's where we're at with everything. Nate Geiger is coming along very well. You know, he will not practice in the spring. He'll be doing like drill work as it goes, but typically on a ACL protocol, he'll be cleared to do everything in the summer. He'll be fall camp, full go, and do all that. Won't be practicing in the spring. Quinn Grosstein-Matchey had a labrum surgery that will be he'll be the same thing. He may do some practicing toward the end of the spring and that type of thing. Wes King is fine. Wes King was full go, ready to go. Wes King was back here like on January 2nd, and we're like ready to go. And he's been great, in this off season. So he's healthy, ready to go. Harrison's doing good. Jaden Williams broke a bone in the outside of his foot. Had a surgery yesterday. He will be fine. Would probably be very limited activity in the spring, but it's not something that's going to be anything for the long term. So that's a good thing there. Sebastian Harsh had he'll be fine to practice in the spring, but he had a surgery at the end of the season. Other than that, I think we go out there, everybody's pretty much there, which is good. So, and that was one thing that came out of this season for everything is that, we had a lot of injuries that went through the season. We don't have a lot of residuals that came out of it. Because unfortunately, while we were being injured all year long and finally got healthy at the end of the year, by then it's too late, but for the most part, we're able to go into January here a lot healthier, so that's a good thing. So,
Good?
anything else?
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Thanks, Jay.